Hi, anyone and everyone. Welcome to Have You Heard About This Case? My name is Sam.
And my name is Kelly. We're bringing you another international case this week, and we are also diving into the past. Today we'll look into the world of women working in the resistance of the Nazis during World War II. I'm super excited to share with you, but I will note I might butcher some of these names. I've been practicing, but fair warning here.
It's hard. We just did the Russian case. It's hard.
Oh, it's so hard. We did. It's very difficult. It was a lot of howtopronounce.com. They were great. Shout out. Because I had to figure there are a lot of, in this story, y'all will see, there are two languages that everyone is speaking. There are people speaking Dutch and people speaking German and people speaking both. So the names.
I'm excited for this one, though.
I can't wait. What's the question today, Sam?
My question for today is, what was your dream job as a kid?
Oh, that's a good question because it's so opposite. My dream was to be Judy Garland reincarnated. I wanted to be Judy Garland so
I can
bad.
totally see that as you as a kid.
I wanted to be Judy Garland so bad. My parents must have wanted to, her 20th Century Masters studio album that has all her hits on it was the only CD I had of hers because it was the 90s/early 2000s and we had CDs. So I would listen to it over and over and over again, working on my Judy Garland impression. And I'm sure that my parents were like, if I never hear Judy Garland again, it'll be too soon.
I love that.
Yeah, and then, it's only funny. The reason I bring up that it's funny is that it's so opposite what I do or what I did do, which was I was in theater tech, so behind the scenes, because I developed just debilitating stage fright. I could not go out there in front of all those people. And
oh, I never could.
Yeah, even recording our podcast, I've told Sam before that I just get very nervous because I'm used to miking up other people. I'm not used to.
Right. Well, we're in the same boat. I've always been a behind the scenes person on the business world. And so it's like, oh, I'm the one talking?
Right. Yeah. It's just weird. I'm like, well, at least I've gotten used to a little bit talking on a hot mic and allowing that to happen. But yeah, my whole undergraduate experience, I was a stage manager, and that requires you to wear running blacks. So plain black clothing. Which is usually what I like
Which is
anyway.
most of my wardrobe. Yeah, that kind of fits what I wear every day.
Exactly. I'm like, it's so easy. Like, gosh, if you spill your coffee on yourself, it's not the end of the world. It's just
right.
an annoying morning.
And you need a lot of that coffee.
Right. All right. Well, Sam, are you ready? I am so excited.
I am. Let's get into it.
All right, let's all tuck in and gather round to hear the story of one Hannie Schaft. Her story is chronicled in Seducing and Killing Nazis by Sophie Poldermans. I can't recommend it enough, and a lot of the extra material in here that I fill in is to the credit of the book and Poldermans. She also covers the two young women who aided Hannie and knew her intimately. I'll introduce them as the story unfolds. Here we go, our first name. Jannetje Joanna Jo Schaft was a Dutch resistance fighter during World War II. She became known as the girl with the red hair. Her secret name in the resistance movement was Hannie. Since she was referred to this way for the entire war, and since then, in time, she has been referred to as Hannie, we'll be dropping the Jo and referring to her that way.
Okay.
She was born in Haarlem on September 16th, 1920, which at the time was the capital of the province of North Holland. Her mother was Afia Talia Schaft, and she was a Mennonite. Her father was Pieter Schaft. He was a teacher attached to the Social Democratic Workers' Party. The parents were said to be very protective of their daughter due to the loss of her older sister in 1927 to diphtheria.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and here's where I think we would have gotten along well. with Hannie and her friends. I just think about it. It's sort of like, I think was it Cheyenne Cluse that you felt you would be friends with? It was another case we did, but I just
There's
feel
been
like,
quite a few. I feel like I like to cover those sorts of cases, but Cheyenne Cluse was
mhm,
one. Cassie Jo
mhm.
Stoddart.
Yes,
There's
yeah.
a couple that we'll have coming up too, where I kind of relate and choose my cases like that a lot of the time.
Yeah, I just feel like we would have gotten along good together because growing up in the Schaft home, it was commonplace to talk about politics and social justice. After having these conversations with her parents, it led her family to encourage her pursuing a career in law to become a human rights attorney.
Oh wow, yeah, we would get along.
Yeah, exactly. We get along. She sounds well read, well spoken, interesting, and I think it's very cool that at this time where women were, her family was encouraging her to become a lawyer.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, they weren't just like, stay home and give us grandchildren. They were like, get out there and be a human rights attorney. I think that is awesome.
Especially just in that time period. And I'm looking back at this. She was only born a few years before my grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
And my grandmother is amazing. She was born in 1926. And so I'm like trying to think along those timelines because
Right.
my grandmother is still with us. I still get to go see her and hear all of her stories. And so I'm kind of relating this to what I know her life was like around these time periods. And it's just kind
Right.
of crazy to
That's
think about.
really cool. Like, because now you can kind of place where, like, I wonder where my grandma was when this was happening. I wonder about she read it on the news. Y'all probably remember
Exactly.
when we covered Danny Green, and I was very excited about that one because of Sam. I think I was feeling the same way you are now, where I was just like placing myself in the shoes and like being there is very cool.
Yeah, I'll have to give my
See
grandma a
what
call
she's heard.
tomorrow and
See if she's heard. Ask her, have you heard about
see
this
just
case?
like, just have a conversation. Yeah. Yeah, because my grandmother was very well read and like
She's a queen.
very knowledgeable about what was happening in the world.
Led by that guidance from her family, in 1938, Hannie began to attend the University van Amsterdam as a law student. There she became friends with two Jewish students, Sonia Frank and Philine Polak. This, of course, gave Hannie a very strong and informed opinion on the actions being taken against Jews at the time. Just 2 years later, from May 10th, 1940 to May 17th, 1940, Germany began to wage an invasion on Hannie's home, the Netherlands. This was also known as the Battle of the Netherlands. It was a military campaign, part of Case Yellow, the Nazi German invasion of the Low Countries and France during World War II. This battle would crystallize resistance work from the citizens who were now essentially captured by the Nazis in their own home country. Schaft and her compatriots would not go quietly.
Wow.
It began in 1943. The German occupation of the Netherlands saw university students required to sign a declaration of allegiance to the occupation authorities. Schaft refused. She knew what was happening and what could happen to her friends here, and she wanted no part of it. With the strength I am envious of, she refused when some 80% of the students had signed.
Wow.
Yes.
Just imagine having to sign that, though. Like being told that this is what you need to do.
Having no choice, yeah. Like you're a school-age student. She just started college. I'll share here, like I was just about to. Hannie is only 19 years old when this all begins.
Wow.
So these aren't just women. These are
So
young women. So young, yes. And yeah, to have 80% of your classmates sign it and to still be like, I'm not signing that. Like that is, I mean, just in any school
It's a strong
environment.
person.
Yeah, in any school environment, you're kind of like looking around, seeing what everyone else is doing. And she saw and looked and knew it was wrong, which is very impressive.
Mm-hmm.
And for this action, for not signing it, it's crazy. She could not continue her studies. And so moved back in with her parents in the summer of 1943.
Wow. That's
right.
awful.
I know. She couldn't finish her law degree because she wouldn't sign a document that would make her a Nazi sympathizer. Insane.
That's just, it's hard to rationalize all of that. Like we will never fully understand that time period.
No. And the kind of unique and different pressure that was put on them and is still put on young people to join the military or get involved in things. And we'll never know what it was like to have all of your friends, except for, I'm sure some of her friends didn't, because when Hannie went back to live with her parents, she did not leave her friends behind. She took Sonia and Feline with her, and they went into hiding under her supervision.
Oh, wow. Good for her. And standing up for what she believes in and allowing herself to help others.
Absolutely. She didn't just not sign it. She also was like, I'm not leaving you guys here. You're coming with me and you're going to be safe, which is, again, incredible. And like I just said, Hannie was just 19 years old when her homeland was invaded, and she was going to protect it by any means necessary. Together with two sisters, Truce and Freddie Overstegen, who were just 16 and 14, respectively. They were part of the few women who decided to take up arms against the enemy in order to honor the ideal of a livable world. Hannie, Truce, and Freddie also became intimate friends and bonded wholeheartedly over their work. You'll see Truce and Freddie return, which is so lovely because I think this story really highlights the friendship between women when the chips are really down. I think women often get a bad rap that, like, we're always gossiping about each other or we're always, saying, so, I think we just kind of catch a bad rap as far as highlighting female friendships. And I think it's really incredible that these three very young women chose to be armed and defend the country rather than do lower profile resistance work. That was a choice they all made.
Absolutely.
I can't imagine that. Like, you have to take up arms. I mean, it happens. It happens in the world. It happened to Hannie and it happened to her friends. And Hannie was not, like I said earlier, she was not going quietly.
Right.
And we're focusing on Hannie, but Truce and Freddie will come back. Hannie's resistance work began with small acts such as stealing ID cards for Jewish students, including her friends. For Nazis and the Dutch police, identity cards were an important tool in tracking down Jews, resistance fighters, and people who wanted to avoid compulsory employment. From April 1941 onward, every Dutch person aged 15 years or older had to have an identity card. The card had a passport photograph, essentially, and a fingerprint of its owner, as well as a unique number. Large capital J's were stamped onto the documents of Jews to make them instantly recognizable. Starting in 1942, everyone had to carry their card with them at all times, which we can all probably relate to a little bit. In this era, we are post-COVID at this point, and I know I get antsy and nervous when I don't have my card. But it's...
I say mine's still in my bag every day.
Absolutely. And so it's sort of... there's almost another layer to it here because there's a fingerprint on it, and they were made with special ink and stamps and glue. Everything was special watermarked paper, and they made forgery almost impossible.
Well, and just then having the separation of Jay's stamp and like, it just everything you just said, and then having this unique marker that is to separate you from everyone else.
To call out you and your family from the quote unquote normal line, which, it's awful. And Hannie thought so too, which is amazing. She's an incredible woman.
So every time you say something, I'm more excited to hear the next bit.
I know. It's so the forgery was almost impossible, but Hannie is carrying these with her, and the card's unique number could be used to check the data against the local or national public registers. Due to this, ordinary police officers were able to detect almost perfect forgeries if the document was checked thoroughly. So we can imagine Hannie's first acts in the resistance were actually quite bold, this being such a high-stakes document.
That sounds very bold.
Dangerous. As Poldermans said in her book, quote, "We live in a world still dominated by men. As far as wars are concerned, women are often portrayed as the main victims. Well, it is precisely women who resist under such circumstances and show genuine leadership.
Yeah, well, yeah, you're kind of at this point of men truly dominated the world. Women, they were barely working at that point in reality unless they like truly needed the income. They were expected to be stay-at-home parents. And then if anything went wrong with the father or the husband in the relationship, the mother's the one who had to clean everything up at home.
Yeah, so it was very much that kind of culture. So it's, I think, all the more impressive that Hannie said, I want to be armed and I want to go out there and get them. And I think that's...
Yeah, why can't I do it as well?
Why can't I? And the resistance team thankfully thought the same. In summer of 1943, upon leaving the university, Hannie joined the Rod van Verzet, RVV, or Council of Resistance, a movement that had close ties to the Communist Party of the Netherlands. Schaft made it clear that she did not want to act as a courier and instead wanted to work with weapons. Schaft was then made responsible for sabotaging and assassinating various targets. She was assigned to carry out attacks on Germans, Dutch Nazis, collaborators, and traitors. She learned to speak German fluently and became involved with the German soldiers.
It's a lot.
I know.
Like, that's incredible, but like, wow.
And when you think about the time frame, too, like, to learn German fluently, that's crazy. That's crazy and awesome.
I have tried on multiple occasions to learn languages. It's not possible for me. I've come to the conclusion I can't learn another language.
That's fair. You know, some people have the gift of the gab, and I am so jealous of that. They just pick up languages so easily, and I have been very much trying with Spanish, but verbs, once you get to grammar with me in any other language, it's difficult. So she's speaking her second language in these high stakes meetings.
Yeah, and you have to be confident and not stumble on your words.
Right.
You know exactly what you're talking about.
Right. You have to be cool as a cucumber. And I would be losing my mind like a bull in a china shop, not have any idea what to do. So again, I remain.
I would be in my own language.
Yeah. Here I remain in awe as their plans unfolded. The three young friends, Hannie, Truce, and Freddie, planned for their mission. In an act of bravery so big, I can't hold it in my brain, they would seduce high-ranking Nazi officials into bringing them to the Haarlemmerhout, a public park. They would then lure them into the deep, thick woods in the park and kill them. They did what they did, quote, because it had to be done, because they believed in justice, and because they never let go of their ideals, author Sophie Poldermans said. Poldermans worked closely with both Truce and Freddie on the board of the National Hannie Schaft Commemoration Foundation, now the National Hannie Schaft Foundation. They would giggle and chat and flirt, all in their second fluent language of German, and you can imagine this fluency would be a very powerful, convincing tool to these Nazis.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, because they think, well, listen to how fluent and crisp their German is. They must be on our side. And they're a woman.
Exactly. Like they're not smart enough to be able to do this is essentially what that's coming down to.
Oh, yeah.
In reality.
Yeah, and I think that these girls use that to their advantage with aplomb. Like, chef's kiss.
Right.
Yeah, use it. When they underestimate you, use it. They don't know what's coming. Right. Their resistance work also included the liquidation of dangerous Germans and Dutch people, including members of the SS, Schutzstaffel, or Protection Squadron, the SD, the Nazi Intelligence Unit, and the NSB, a Dutch fascist and later Nazi political party that called itself a movement. Freddie later said with a smile, "Oh, well, liquidation is a nice word for killing."
Oh, wow.
Yeah, these...
Like, I get it, but...
These ladies are not to be played with. They are not to be played with. The liquidations the women carried out were always high tension and stakes because they were fraught with risky pitfalls. Because there was a constant chance of discovery, Hannie always carried her gun in her handbag. Before any attack, She always combed her red hair extensively, applied powder to her face, and put lipstick on her lips. She did this, quote, to die beautifully, she told in confidence to Truce Oberstein. This is one of the reasons I became obsessed with this case. Hannie Schaft is not worried that she's a woman. She is only thinking about how best she can serve her country to rid it of their captors, and to do that, she was ready to face whatever punishment they could deal out beautifully.
Yeah, she knows that she has these abilities in just the context of her being a woman and her having the ability to seduce the soldiers, and she's taking advantage of those strengths that anyone else who's fighting, most people who's fighting in this situation just flat out can't do.
And that's another reason, after hearing that, reading it actually, in Seducing and Killing Nazis by Sophie Poldermans, I was like, this girl would be my friend. She's combing her hair, right. She's getting her powder on and getting her lips done because she's going to be pretty if they get her. I love that. I do.
Yeah, me too.
And now here we go. Trigger warning for the next paragraph, y'all. It is grim. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Fast forward if you need to. Here we go. Truce further elaborated on the women's state of mind around these resistance killings, saying, quote, once I was confronted with an SS soldier, a Dutch SS soldier even, who was killing a small baby by hitting it against the wall. He grabbed the baby and hit it against the wall. The father and sister had to watch. They were obviously hysterical. The child was dead. I shot that guy right there and then. It wasn't an assignment, but I don't regret it.
Oh, that's heavy.
Yeah. She didn't get assigned to kill him, but he's going. Which, I'm with her on that. That's some grim... Yeah. That's some grim stuff. Like, take him out. And Truce further stated the quote from above that she gave to Poldermans. They did what they did, quote, because it had to be done. They saw it as their duty. She shared some advice. Now everybody listen. The grim part is over. I think we all need to hear what Truce has to say. She shared, quote, what I want to pass on to young people is that if you have to make a decision, that decision must be a right one, and you must always remain human.
Well, I like the way that's worded, because I think that the must always remain human. I think there's times we don't always remember that.
Especially lately, it seems like.
Mm-hmm. In this time period and lately.
And to further illustrate that, Hannie Schaft was not a cold-blooded assassin, and neither were Truce and Freddie. Schaft did not have to accept every assignment, and she refused to participate in the kidnapping of children of a Nazi official. Schaft knew that if the plan failed, the children would have to be killed. She considered this to be too similar to the Nazis' act of terror. Mad respect there. I can't get over how impressed I am with how these very young women handled themselves with maturity well beyond their years, making decisions that none of us have ever been in the position to make. Maybe some of you have been put in a position like that. If you've served, thank you for your service. I will never understand what it is to make a decision like that.
Yeah, no, I could never understand.
There's
that
no
fully.
higher level than someone's life being on the line, and Hannie, Truce, and Freddie seem to hold on to this no matter what life it was, which is beautiful, because she's right, in my opinion. If she had kidnapped a Nazi's children, and it didn't go well, and they had to shoot those children, then what are we, you know?
Yeah, she's right. That's really no different.
It is. It's no different. It's killing an innocent child.
Exactly, yeah.
As she carried on her resistance work, Schaft was seen at the location of an assassination and was identified as the girl with the red hair. Her involvement led the girl with the red hair to be placed on the Nazis' most wanted list.
Wow.
The other resistance work that was happening, which is just as important in my opinion, was the housing of Jewish children in various safe houses around the country. This was a good job for a woman, as a woman holding a child's hand did not draw too much attention.
Mm-hmm.
Which, brilliant. That is true.
Right.
It wouldn't draw much attention. We're going to hear about many of Hannie's jobs now, but I think it's just as important to remember that that level of resistance is going on as well. So it was just as likely that Schaft would be carrying out liquidations as she was to be escorting Jewish children to a safe place to exist.
Wow. And it's like she clearly wants to protect that child, but she needs to do what she needs to do.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's so many ways she's involved in this. It's quite humbling.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to hear about Schaft's assignments starting on June 8th, 1944. Hannie and Jan Boonkamp, a friend made through the resistance who she had grown close with, attacked the Haarlem confectioner Piet Faber, a man known for his traitorous practices, often collaborating with his two sons who worked for the SS. Faber had grown suspicious that an attack was being planned against him and had recently fled from his building at the Jan to Roopkade in Heemstede. He was biking to this house after work when he encountered Hannie and Jan. They attacked him on the corner, and Faber died a few days later of his injuries. Here's something interesting. On June 15th, 1944, a response to Faber's killing was published in an article that appeared in the German-controlled Haarlemse Courant. The title of the article is simply Savagery, and went on to say, "May the cowardice of the murder of a defenseless man be brought to light, and horrified at the thought that it is here a woman who is guilty of trespassing the life to the production of which God calls the woman. Seducing and Killing Nazis, Sophie Poldermans and myself question the nature of the focus on the perpetrator's gender."
Yeah, that's interesting.
We find it to be striking. The emphasis was very much that she was a woman. Yeah, the emphasis in the press was like, oh my God, it's a woman. So the Nazis, I bet they were just fuming because I would strongly believe that Nazis have a predisposition to underestimate women, which makes me very happy.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
Yeah, however, the story is about to take a turn. On June 21st, 1944, Hannie and Jan carried out an assassination in Zandum on a police officer and collaborator, Willem Reget. Schaft fired the first shot, which hit Boonkamp in the back. Boonkamp was then shot in the stomach by Reget before Boonkamp killed Reget. Mortally wounded, Boonkamp fled the scene. Due to the extent of his injuries, he was arrested shortly after and taken to a hospital. There, he inadvertently gave Schaft's name and address to Dutch Nazi nurses feigning to be resistance workers.
Uh-oh.
Boonkamp later succumbed to his injuries sustained during the execution of the collaborator. Yeah, it's very scary. It's not good. Not good. Because now that they had her information, the Nazis wanted to force Schaft's hand into confession. To do this, they arrested her parents and sent them to Herzogenbusch concentration camp near the city of Den Bosch.
Poor parents.
Wild and crazy. They arrested her family. And also, what strong people to have that happen to them and still, be so strong. Hannie was said to be distressed and grieving her parents' imprisonment and the death of Boonkamp, which caused her to temporarily cease her resistance activities. Boonkamp had become a good friend to her after the short time they worked in such high-stakes jobs, forming a bond of trust. So it must have been doubly hard to hear her parents were imprisoned. However, 2 months after being arrested by the Nazis, Schaft's parents were released from the concentration camp. I'm not sure how it came about that they were released, but nevertheless, Hannie had had her time to grieve and was ready to return.
Interesting that they don't know why they were released.
No idea. Yeah.
Well, good. And overall, good. They don't belong there. No one really does, but you know what I mean? Of like, they should not have been there to begin with.
Right. Exactly. Right. As Hannie came back to the resistance, the RVV, she knew that she had a target on her back as the girl with the red hair. So she dyed her hair black and wore glasses to hide her identity.
I was going to say, this sounds like you.
how much Hannie and I would have gotten along, because my hair used to be red and I just dyed it black too. So
I'm sorry, I will not be dyeing my red hair black. It is staying red.
I understand, man. It's such a pain.
Oh, I wish it grew out of my head this color.
Don't. It grows out of your head that color. Leave it, or you'll be trapped in the same boat as me.
Right? No one needs to know that.
Your hair care secrets are between you and the Lord and your mother, you know? No one needs to know. You don't know. So, regardless, she dyed her hair black. She continued contributing to assassinations and sabotage. She also took on courier work and the transportation of illegal weapons and the dissemination of illegal newspapers. The Dutch underground press was part of the resistance to the German occupation of the Netherlands. Similar movements were happening across German-occupied Europe. After their invasion, the Germans took control of the Dutch press and enforced censorship and the publication of Nazi propaganda. In response, private Dutch citizens organized uncensored publishing of their own papers, which were deemed illegal. At the time, it was so illegal that there were heavy penalties, including up to the death penalty.
Yeah, I was just saying that putting news out there that wasn't controlled by the Nazis was such a huge deal to them, because they wanted to control everything, that whatever you're doing, you're going to get a maximum offense for.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Legal newspapers, you could get the death penalty for, just because they need to control that narrative. Anything else threatens their hold over that. And the RVV, the resistance unit mentioned before that Hannie was a part of, they had been preparing to liquidate the leaders of Haarlem Criminal Investigation Service, Inspector Fake Chris, and his subordinates, Willemse and Smit. Independent of the RVV, other resistance groups were also targeting these three men. The first attack against Smit had failed, causing a resistance worker to get a bullet in the leg. The same day as Smit's attack, Willemse was attacked by Hannie and Cor Russman at Schoterweg. Hannie hit Willemse in his arm, but then her gun failed.
Oh no.
As she tried to fix her gun, she fell. Willemse moved toward her and shot one bullet that went through Hannie's thigh. Cor took her to her parents' general practitioner, the trustworthy Dr. Lancey at the Duin Dornstraat. Hannie was lucky.
Wow.
The bullet went straight through her thigh without any damage to arteries or major structure in her leg.
Right.
Yeah, right. It went right through her leg, which, but also, thank goodness, it missed. She now would have to go into hiding again, where she stayed for a week before returning to her normal safe house with a family called the Elsingas. Schaft maintained most of her resistance work while living in their home.
That's just crazy.
It is. It's wild and crazy. Like, I can't believe this. And wait till you hear the next part. On October 25th, 1944, at 7:30 a.m., Hannie and Truus were ready to try again to liquidate Fake Chris. After 4 previous attempts by various resistance groups, they hoped that this time it would work. At 8:15 a.m., they saw him approaching on a bicycle along the Westergracht. But just when Hannie and Truus were going to bike up to him, they heard 5 shots. All of the shots hit their target, and Chris dropped dead off his bicycle.
Oh, wow.
Another resistance group had planned an attack on the same day at the same time without the RVV's prior knowledge.
Wow.
Yeah. They quickly told onlookers they would notify the police and bike
We're out of
away.
here. Yeah, right?
Yeah. They said, we'll go get the cops. Don't look over here. Look over there. Just the magician's trick of don't look here, look at the other hand, you know? And then another really good one interesting one. On March 1st, 1945, Hannie and Truus disguised themselves as workmen and liquidated Willem Zirkzee, a collaborating NSB police inspector who worked closely together with the SD in Amsterdam. The attack was ordered by Mr. Sickle, and executed close to Zirkzee's home. 2 days later, as a reprisal, 15 men were taken from prison in Amsterdam and were shot at the Dreef in Haarlem, while a crowd of people was forced to watch.
Wow.
Today, a statue stands on the spot that was unveiled in 1949 by Mari Andreessen, called Man Standing in Front of the Firing Squad.
Right? That's crazy.
Yeah. 15 men for one dude. One guy. And they executed 15 prisoners of war. Like, let's not get it twisted. These are POWs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like, let's remember that's 15 prisoners of war that they've just executed. However, this is before the Geneva Convention, from my understanding. I'm not sure what the rule is in the Netherlands, but we'll see as it unfolds. That same month, on March 15th, Schaft and Truus wounded Co Langendijk, a hairdresser from Elmade, who worked for the Sicherheidsdienst, SD, a Nazi intelligence agency, as we mentioned.
Okay. So
he survived.
It's crazy, though.
However, as we were just discussing, in 1949,
Right.
Langendijk was sentenced to life imprisonment for his deeds in the war. So, yeah, he survived, but he got locked up, which is good. That very same month, things escalated in danger.
Oh, no.
Unfortunately, it was propelling our protagonist and Dutch heroine toward her ultimate end. On March 21st, 1945, Hannie was arrested at a military checkpoint.
Oh, wow.
She was found to be distributing the illegal community newspaper De Waarheid, literally, the truth, which was a cover story. Hannie was secretly transporting documentation for the resistance. During this assignment, she worked closely with Anna A.C. Vanghoff. Hannie had left her safe house early in the evening, not knowing that she was never to return. In a narrow passage at the checkpoint, she was arrested where the Germans had constructed a heavy concrete roadblock, which was properly referred to with the German and Dutch word for wall, the Mauermur.
Oh, no.
She was stopped and forced to open her bags for inspection. The Germans seized the newspapers and Schaft's handbag, not knowing that it was equipped with her 9mm FN resistance gun.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so it's not good. She's there and we have weapons and it's not good. Schaft also knew the commanding officer at the Mauermur and called out to him. Lieutenant Willy Laget acted like he did not know her and would not come over to her aid. Meanwhile, resistance member Commander Franz van der Wiel's sisters had seen Hannie being searched and tried to reach their brothers Franz and Sander, who were also in the resistance. They also tried to reach Truus and Freddie. Ultimately, they did not succeed.
You are doing so much better than I would with how many you have to do.
Hannie is then ominously taken into a car where she was transported to the Ripperdonk IJzerne at the Cleverlen for interrogation. Sorry, friends, for all these pronunciations, but I'm working on it. My Dutch is not. Be gentle, you guys. It's tough. Confusing. But either way, she's transported, she's taken away. So, yikes. No matter where they're taking her, they now officially have her in their custody.
It really just, shows, her strength from the very beginning to now of she started by not signing the document and stood her ground all the way through now.
And at this location, they were going to interrogate her. However, from there, she was transferred to the German headquarters, the Ortskommandantur, at the Haarlemmerhout. She was interrogated there without saying a word, which, impressive. And she's not giving anybody up. She's not. And wait till you, oh gosh, I can't. This story is so good.
Oh, I'm excited.
She's not only not naming names, she's going to be responsible for some other really good acts from her last days. After the interrogation, at the end of the evening, she was taken to the Haarlem House of Detention,
right,
the Koppel, at Oostfest. Only once there did Germans check her handbag and find the gun. She was taken to a cell on the first floor where a private sentry had to ensure that nobody could come into contact with her. Then again, the same evening, Hannie is taken from her cell by the German Emil Ruhl, who happened to be in the Haarlem House of Detention, and she was then taken to the Amsterdam House of Detention. So we're moving her. We're moving over and over and over again. When it became clear to the RVV that Hannie was not returning home from her assignment at the checkpoint, the alarm was immediately raised among the RVV and other resistance groups. They were told a girl matching the description of Hannie Schaft had been brought into the Ortskommandantur office the night before and would have been brought to Amsterdam afterward. The RVV traveled all of the possible routes to Amsterdam, but they were too late.
Oh, no.
I know. At the House of Detention, Hannie was isolated and housed alone. She was not allowed to interact with other prisoners. On her door hung a sign, Murderer. After much interrogation, torture, and solitary confinement, Schaft was identified by the roots of her red hair by her former colleague, Anna Vanghoff. Hannie is the model of someone going down swinging for their beliefs. She held up against interrogation, solitary confinement, and even torture, and still did not break and reveal herself. It took the betrayal of a friend for Hannie to finally be deemed the girl with the red hair. However, accounts vary if this betrayal happened, though. Women Heroes of World War II by Catherine Atwood gives this version of the story. The account in Seducing and Killing Nazis tells a different story, that Schaft was made to wash the black out of her hair so that it turned red again. So
quite different.
Yeah, we might not ever know, but we do know they identified her by the color of her hair, meaning that she had not spoken.
Right.
She had not spoken the whole time. She hadn't even given them her identification or her name. They identified her. Once it was red, they knew they had the right woman, which sucks. Bo Longendijk, you remember him, the hairdresser. Well, his fiancée recognized Hannie and pointed her out in prison as the perpetrator of the earlier attack on Co Longendijk at the Satin Bulwark.
Oh, no.
I know. Eventually, Hannie admitted to the attack. And as a result, 5 women who were supposed to be executed as a reprisal for the attack were spared execution.
Wow.
Like, incredible. Incredible. I can't imagine if the Nazis had been able to fervently pursue perpetrators for these attacks, because Hannie also admitted to the attacks on Ragat, Faber, Smit, and Willemse. We've all discussed. But if the Nazis had been able to pursue any one of these 5 attacks, it would be very likely that it would have involved the death of several innocent people, maybe even some who were among Hannie's friends.
Right. Yeah. She's doing this to save other people.
To save them. Yes. This was my other, when I mentioned that she still finds a way to do good. This is what I mentioned. She saved 5 women who might have been arrested or who might have been executed.
Right. That's incredible.
Unfortunately, on April 17th, 1945, Hannie is taken out of her cell by the German Matthias Schmitz and the Dutch investigator Martin Hyper. Known for his arrests, his cooperation in the Silberten murders, and his cruelty in interrogations.
Oh, no.
Yeah, he's a bad dude. He's a bad dude. Hannie is said to have known this was the end, as she is remembered screaming very hard and very long as she was escorted out of her cell, as told by an imprisoned doctor, Ada van Rossum.
Wow.
Ugh, I can't imagine that.
Right.
The men were joined in the car by the Germans Korbes and Kluting. At the Ortskommandantur, a German soldier got into the car with a shovel.
Uh-oh.
Yeah,
Right.
I can't imagine how scary that must have been. Sheesh. They drove to Overveen via the Zeeweg, through the dunes, and turned right as the populous areas faded away. Hyper and Schmitz took Hannie into the dunes on foot. This whole incident, everything about it, went against an agreement made by the occupiers and the Dutch resistance to stop executions.
Yeah, this seems like they're doing this on their own and just to do it.
Right. Exactly. They're just picking people out,
Mm-hmm.
as we know was commonplace. You just pick somebody and kill them. I mean, they took 15 men from their cells and executed them because one man was murdered. So 2 men then took Hannie to the site of her execution. Schmitz shot her in the head at close range. However, the bullet only grazed Schaft's ear, it is reported. She allegedly told her executioners,
Yes.
Ich schieß better. I shoot better. Yeah, I know, isn't she incredible? Like, I shoot better. After which, Hyper delivered a final volley of shots to her head with a machine gun, killing her.
Wow. Oof.
Yeah, exactly. A machine gun. Like, wow, you guys are terrible shots. If you're using a machine gun in an execution, why do you need to shoot a whole volley of shots at her? Like, no wonder I would have
Right?
yelled the same thing. Like, you guys can't shoot for crap. Get your act together. A hole was then dug in which they buried Hannie's body. This was becoming a popular spot for the Nazis to execute resistance members and was fast becoming a mass grave.
Oh, wow.
Schaft's final words became famous, but they were never confirmed. A Dutch World War II historian said a search through the Dutch archives does not ever mention Schaft saying, I shoot better. During a post-war interrogation, Hyper said he had been talking to Schaft when suddenly he heard a gunshot. According to Hyper, she cried out in pain and started shaking. Realizing that Schmitz had only grazed her, as we mentioned, he thought he would take care of it himself with a machine gun. She immediately collapsed as one of the 3 shots she was struck with hit her in the head. I think it's worth mentioning here that there were only 3 people in this desert, and no historians were present. And I'm not going to take a Nazi's word that the woman who held up so well under their torture suddenly became a shaking mess.
So it seems out of character for her.
Yeah. So whether Schaft's last words are a tall tale or not, I'd take that over the testimony of some Nazi in interrogation trying to save his own skin.
Yeah. Yeah, he's making it sound better for himself. That's what it sounds like to me.
Yes, I choose to believe that you were humiliated and, of course, would never relay that story because you were embarrassed that you are a horrible shot. You're at point blank range. Schaft's execution was directly ordered by Willy Leger. Willy Leger was the German chief of the SD, the Nazi intelligence unit. After the war, a court in the Netherlands found Leger guilty of war crimes and sentenced him to death in 1949. This sentence was confirmed in 1950. However, Leger was never executed since Queen Juliana, who had become increasingly reluctant to authorize death sentences, refused to sign his death warrant. This was opposed by the Dutch cabinet, and there were large public protests against amnesty for Leger. However, in 1952, his sentence was commuted to life in prison. In 1966, Leger was released from prison on health grounds on the order of the Minister of Justice.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. The decision immediately sparked public outcry, but Leger was permitted to return to Germany, where he died in 1971. And currently, he's rotting in hell.
That's a lot of time.
Yep, till 1971.
Yeah, better be.
Emil Ruhl gave his motivation for executing Hannie in his statement to Ton Kors in Duisburg in 1975. So this guy lived a long time, too. Quote, "For us, Hannie was a Mörderin, a terrorist who shot our people. Someone who hunted us, and we hunted her. Kein Gerechtigkeit, aber Vergeltung." Not justice, but retribution.
Okay.
That's what he said.
Okay. What about everything else that the Nazis had done?
I don't understand how you could properly stand behind the statement, not justice, but retribution.
Right?
Why would you stand by that? Wouldn't you want to stand by, like, justice? Justice was served? No, you'd rather have your revenge taken care of? I'm just confused by that.
Well, also, you look at everything else that you're doing. Why not have justice for that? Which is what Hannie was trying to provide.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right. Exactly. So, and yeah, he said that in 1975, so
Yeah.
he was still kicking for a while, which is garbage. As so many of these guys were. They were all kicking it for a while. They just run out of the country because they knew they could be convicted on war crimes.
Mm-hmm.
On May 6, 1945, just under 1 month after Hannie's execution day, was Liberation Day in the Netherlands. The war was announced to be officially over. However, sporadic attacks from the straggling Nazis still happened. On May 8, 1945, the first Canadians entered Haarlem, and the Germans were disarmed to prevent further attacks on the people. Despite the celebrations of liberation, Hannie's whereabouts were still unknown to her family.
Mm.
Her parents initially thought she was alive, and she was just behind the Ijazel line. On May 21st, 1945, Hannie's mother went to see Mr. Sickle, district attorney in Haarlem and regional commander of the Internal Armed Forces, to inquire about her daughter.
Oh, that's awful.
He told her that Hannie had been executed.
She had hope for so long.
She did. They thought and they hoped, and I understand that, like, thinking and hoping someone alive, rather, and hearing word that they're dead, like, oh, it's just shattering.
Yeah, you just want the ability to know that they could come home in the future, and that's taken away from you.
Exactly. And even more heartbreakingly, the next day, Pieter Schaft wrote to his family, quote, "Dear all, what we feared has become reality. Our darling, our dear Jupe, was killed by the Gestapo executioners at the very last moment. April 17th, probably. We were struck with horror, and I can't write anymore." End quote.
Wow.
Right. So this poor man, and when we think right back to the beginning, they were very protective over their daughter because they had already lost her sister to diphtheria.
Yeah, you mentioned that in the beginning.
So this is his only child. Yeah. It's his only child. And here's something interesting about the dunes. After the war, the remains of 422 members of the resistance were found in the dunes by Overveen.
Oh, wow.
There were 421 men and 1 woman, Hannie Schaft.
That seems fitting.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Where she's supposed to be, with the other resistance fighters.
Exactly.
She fought for her country. On November 27th, 1945, Hannie was reburied in a state funeral at the Dutch Honorary Cemetery, Bloemendaal. Members of the Dutch government and the royal family attended, including Queen Wilhelmina and Princess Juliana, the former calling Schaft the symbol of the resistance. Later under her rule, Queen Juliana unveiled a bronze commemorative statue in the Kinau Park, nearby Schaft's birthplace in Haarlem.
Wow. It's nice to see that she's getting the respect.
Absolutely, and the honor that she is rightfully earned to be. I hope that, I don't know anything about the honorary cemetery in Bloemendaal, but I hope that it is something of a Dutch Arlington cemetery. I would hope. I would hope it's
right.
That's where they put her. Unless, of course, like her because she's sort of escalated at this point to be a national hero. So her family isn't really offered the ability to bury her privately. You know, she's sort of become this symbol of the resistance, as
Right.
the queen put it. So I do hope that she was put somewhere in a place of honor. It sounds like she was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does sound like she was.
It is unknown if the Nazi Matthias Schmitz was ever prosecuted. However, Hyper was prosecuted for war crimes in the Dutch courts. He was subsequently found guilty, sentenced to death, and executed in 1948.
Good.
Good riddance.
Yes, good.
Schaft was one of the 95 people to receive the Dutch Cross of Resistance, and General Eisenhower awarded her a decoration, possibly the Medal of Freedom. It's not confirmed anywhere what decoration Schaft was awarded by the USA.
Oh, interesting.
Which I would very much like to know.
Yeah.
For our international listeners, the reason I'm so curious is that the Medal of Freedom in America is the highest honor that a civilian may earn.
Mm-hmm.
So I would be very curious to see if she was given the Medal of Freedom. I feel she deserves it. But I would like to know, like, very specifically, like, oh, it was this. However, it's not saved anywhere.
Yeah, like, I'm very curious.
Mm-hmm. I'm very curious about that. Hannie's popularity did take a dip as the Dutch Communist Party celebrated her as an icon. It reached the point where the commemoration at Hannie's grave was forbidden in 1951. The commemorators, who were estimated to number over 10,000 people.
Wow.
Yeah, so she's really becoming this force of nature in Dutch history. She's becoming this figurehead, which is beautiful, but...
So that's still 1951. That's crazy.
Mm-hmm. When you think about it, not that long ago.
Well, 1951, that's just a handful of years after everything. But women's rights were still so minimal at that point. And to have 10,000 people who want to come out and celebrate you for the work that you've done in that regard, that's incredible.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And yeah, these 10,000 people who gathered were stopped by several hundred police and military with the aid of 4 tanks.
Wow.
So they needed to bring out tanks. Yep. And even though they brought out tanks, a group of 7 people managed to circumvent the blockade and reach the burial ground, but they were arrested when they tolled the bell.
Of course, they had to, right?
They made it through. Yeah, absolutely. 7 people were like, we can do this if we run right now. From the next year on, the communists decided to prevent another such scene by holding their commemoration in Haarlem instead.
Probably a smart choice.
Probably. A number of schools and streets have been named for Hannie Schaft. For Hannie and the other resistance fighters like Truce and Freddie, her dear friends, a foundation has been created. The National Hannie Schaft Foundation. Her story has been mentioned in books, movies, songs, and a full biography of her life. And again, in this book, Seducing and Killing Nazis by Sophie Poldermans, I recommend very much. She is remembered each year in November during a national event held in Haarlem. In the early 1990s, thanks to the Hannie Schaft Memorial Foundation, commemorations were once again permitted. The last Sunday of each November in the Netherlands is a day of remembrance for Hannie's life and work. And that is the story of the Dutch resistance fighter, 19-year-old Hannie Schaft.
What an incredible story.
This book, I could not put this book down when I read it. Yeah, it was more than 3 or 4 years ago I read this book, and it has stuck with me.
Well, I remember you telling me and Ash about it at one point. And we both were just sitting there like stunned, like, no way.
Yeah, I think about this case a lot. A lot.
Well, thank you for bringing it forward. This was such a different type of case to bring forward that was so interesting.
Yeah, right. Just a little something, we think it's good to remember this story because, like I said, women are often shortchanged, I think, by just the predominant culture who knows or who says that women are, gossiping and catty, and women actually are forming these very real lifelong friendships that are so important to them that they are willing to give up their own life so that they may save like 5 other women like Hannie did.
It's great to see, especially a story from that time period where a woman broke the glass ceiling and did exactly what she wanted to do.
Yeah, I'm just glad that I got to share it with everyone, because as soon as I started writing the script, I just wrote it in a flurry, and I'm just glad that we're sharing Hannie's story, and she was clearly a wonderful person. And if I ever make it to the Netherlands, which I hope I do, I would love to go see the statue of her so I can leave some flowers, because it's just incredible.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just incredible.
Yes, thank you all for listening to Have You Heard About This Case? You can find us on Instagram at Have You Heard About This Case Pod, on Twitter at HYHATC Pod. You can email us at haveyouheardaboutThisCase@gmail.com. Thank you, and we'll talk to you all later.
Bye.